So good to see everybody. But I can't see everybody this morning because I'm using my iPad in the country, and it's a very beautiful setting here and beautiful morning. And I hope it's beautiful where you are. And we're going to find out. I thought we were going to find out who we are and why we're here, but Jim says maybe we're going to find out that we don't know. So I don't know what will happen. I was counting on by 10 o'clock knowing who I am and why I'm here. But I think that was false advertising. So, Jim, we're so happy to have you facilitating us this morning with these big questions. I love the big questions.
Well, I wanted a question large enough that we can all fall into it and still have room for other things.
Mhm.
So good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Did you all have a nice holiday weekend? So this question I asked is an example of something called saming. It's a word derived from the word othering. Othering is a practice of excluding people from some real or imagined community, declaring them other, by extension, not fully human. And saming is the reverse of that. It's making us identical by flattening and trivializing who we are. For example, assuming that we're all Americans and had a holiday weekend, and that it's morning, and Shekafe just told us that it's evening where she is, but I pretended to ignore that and say good morning. Other ways we can same each other is to speak as if we're all members of some presumed default race or religion or gender. Saming is a technology of belonging. We fit in because we have amputated the parts of ourselves that were sticking out. But wait a minute, there are these categories, right? There are holidays and countries and races and genders, and so why can't we use them? I mean, our language is based on creating and maintaining categories to some degree. Say a word like table is to invoke the commonness of all tables for practical purposes, even though right in this room, I have a table over there and there's a table down there. They look nothing like each other, but we same them. We give them the same word, but tables don't worry about that because as far as I know, tables know who they are and what they're doing there. If tables know anything, that is. And say when we do physics, we like to think that all electrons are the same. But I don't like to do that. I like to think that I enjoy thinking of electrons as each being different from each other. Like snowflakes, but snowflakes, you kind of know how they're different. Electrons, you don't really know how they're different. In fact, most people just think of electrons as you have an electrical wire and you got electrons flowing through it, electrical current. You think of those electrons as all identical, but why think of them identical? Why can't they all be different? Some of them may be thinking of going the other way, but they're kind of get caught up in the crowd. Well, you can think of electrons being different if you want to. No one's going to stop you. It's fun. I mean, we treat coins with the same denomination as the same, but they're all different. They have different dates. Some are heads, some are tails. So why not with electrons? Well, usually electrons are dealt with by physics, and physics wants wants them to be all the same, and because they're physics people, we kind of fall in line. All the electrons get samed. The world of categories is what Jean called the unit model. It's a way of understanding the world by dividing it up into sets of identical units and ignoring if they're not really identical, as if there is such a thing as really identical. And by Jean, of course, I'm referring to Eugene Gendlin, and I'm assuming you all know this. In other words, I'm saming you. We're all people who know the same stuff, and saming, I'm saming us as a group in a way. And often we like to be samed. It's comfort to be here among a uniformish us. You know, there might be a them out there who have a different view of the world, and we're in here with those who can be considered identical if we're squinting our eyes and not looking clearly. Well, there's somebody who's different. Who can that be? All right. So we like to be same because we feel at home. We belong, even if all of us are in favor of diversity. We are, right? We're all the same here. So when I ask, who are we and what we're doing here? Uh-oh. When I ask who we are and what we're doing here, who is the we? Who is this we? This is being part two. Maybe the we are those who came to part one. So if you didn't come to part one, maybe you're not part of this we. Now we are all the we. Everybody here is part of that we. And if we do a part three, you can still be part of that we. I'm certifying you as part of the we. But I will do a mini review of part one, just to bring this we together. And let's see if I can. Okay, so I put the link to part one in the chat. Don't watch it now, though, even though it's going to be better than part two. So in part one, I spoke of the many ways to ask the question. The question being, who are we and what are we doing here? And one of the ways I said we can ask it is as a mystic or as a philosopher or as an existentialist, a phenomenologist. And I said that when we did that, we already sort of knew who we were. We were philosophers of some sort. But I was worried in part one. We mainly answered the question as existentialists, and I thought we did a reasonably good job of it. But I said that when I was asking, I was more bewildered. I was more confused. I was the person who needed help in answering the question. And then I sang you a song, which didn't record very well. So if you listen to the recording, you're not really going to hear it. Those of you who may have come for a song today, you're not going to get one. So, but you can leave now. If there's a part three, I'll try and do a song again. Also in part one, we refused the question with one that sounds similar, but is really very different. And that's the question, who am I and what am I doing here? And it sounds similar, but I never ask who am I and what am I doing here. And it's not because I avoid asking it uh, or because the answer is obvious. I but in practice, it just doesn't concern me when I'm alone who I am and what I'm doing there. It's more of something that occurs to me in a group. It's a we question. Uh, who are we in situations? There are other people with me. We are interaction. And it's in that interaction that I'm asking. Maybe that's what I'm really asking, or what I'm asserting and making a difference between the two questions is that maybe I'm comfortable with who I am when I'm alone and uncomfortable in a crowd. Uh, there might be something to that, but I'm not asking the question seeking comfort. I'm not asking the question uh, to fix something. Anyway, today I don't want to play philosopher and I don't want to play solipsist. I want to ask in a very different way. I want to ask it as a question that's wrong to answer. The way that the Tao that can be spoken of is not the real Tao. I want answering this question to be more than wrong. I want it to be beside the point. I want us to feel the question, not alone, but with the rest of us. I want us all to get into feeling this question. And the answer, the one that we both seek and refuse at the same time, is going to be found inside of us or not found inside of us. But that's where we're going to look. We're looking for an inner order because asking is a rejection of the concept that all order comes from the outside. I'm not asking us to explain where we all fit into the established order. It's not a question for which we present our resumes. I'm not, it's a question of that I'm asking not as a rebel or as an anarchist, but as a misfit. I'm trying to steer us toward our inner misfits. And we all have one. We all have an inner misfit. I want to show you a cartoon that might help. If I can share the screen, we'll find out shortly. Here, the cartoon done by a cartoonist known as Corin, who, when I looked up the cartoon, found out that he's not alive anymore. Uh, so either he now knows who he is and knows what he's doing, or, well, we don't know. We don't know about people who aren't alive. At least I don't. So they're looking in this car, and he says, well, there's your problem. The problem isn't machinery. The problem is life. Life is the problem. I mean, that's kind of what this cartoon is telling us. So let me unshare. So in part one, I told people that whether they asked the question, wondered about things like this, or whether they did not ask the question, that they came to the right place. I want part two to be for people who are not in the right place, who worry there may not be a right place. So if that describes you, you've come to the right place. Well, you may not feel that way, but you have. This is the right place for not feeling you're in the right place. And that's kind of a focusing paradox because I'm asserting your sense of the situation is incorrect. You feel not in the right place, and yet you are. But if you're like me, it's a familiar situation. Those around you insist on a reality which feels wrong. And it gets worse because they tell you that your feeling of wrongness is okay, because we all feel that way at times. So what are you supposed to do with that? I'm not sure. This is the feeling. It's personal, and it's about our relationship with the group at the same time. And I want you to understand, and I want to understand, why aren't we asking this all the time? And I already said that part of the answer is that it's a comfort to feel that we know who we are and what we're doing. To not even notice the need for the question, because noticing would make us uncomfortable. Just like we wish the inner critic would shut up. We wish the inner misfit to vanish so that we can belong. But we need both of those. And in some sense, at least this was the feeling I had when I was thinking about this, the inner misfit is just like the inner critic, but on a group level, that we are critical of the feeling of belonging. So can you have that feeling that you're in the wrong place and therefore you're in the right place? What do people think? Anybody?
Can you repeat that? Oh, sorry.
If you're bewildered by my question, if it doesn't make sense to you and need it repeated, you're in the right place. I want someone who doesn't know what they're going to say to say something now.
I don't know what I'm going to say.
That's great. That's great. Pauline?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to say. And I suppose it's the power of and. And after that, then it's in relation to the not knowing. You know, it's not the general not knowing or the group not knowing. It's kind of like, I know it is you. I know it's you that's talking, Jim, because I can see you. And from that, then we're in relationship. I'm not asking anyone else. At least I have pinned one down. And I'm not pinning you down, but it's the excitement of that in some way, you know, at least my brain is functioning, you know, so we're not playing games, you know. So in that way, there's some hope of me, and I feel the excitement is felt since, because maybe it's creativity or playfulness or something like that. I didn't know I was going to say that, but they kind of like the inner, what did you call it?
The inner
misfit. The inner misfit and the critic in that. So in that way, you know, it's playful, and but still after a while is, I know I'm talking to you, Jim. I can see you. I can see you. So
you must be on speaker view then.
I must be on speaker view. I don't know what that is. How do you mean?
On Zoom.
I don't know.
Never mind.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Is there anybody who doesn't want to speak because they know it's the wrong thing? I want your inner misfit to speak up at this point. Try to let it out. I know it's in there. You know it's in there. See what you can do to disrupt this meeting.
I don't think I have anything disruptive to say, Jim, but I've at times felt I was in the wrong place in this group, but I didn't feel that the group was the right place.
Then you're in the right place. And that is a little disruptive because...
Okay.
And I once had a teacher whose favorite saying was, doing it wrong was doing it right. And I sort of think that's something along the lines close to what you're saying. That if we're not doing it right, there's something right about not doing it right. Because But then again, that doesn't feel good either. So there's no right. There is no right in a sense. I don't know if I'm getting it right or not, but hopefully I'm getting it wrong. Hopefully I'm getting it wrong.
Well, I think that the right and the wrong, we're trying to transcend the right and the wrong by saying we're wrong, but there's a kind of focusing right, which is different than a unit model right. But the thing that came to me that I think is wrong because it simplifies or makes a handle is now I can't remember who said it. A Buddhist. Yeah, I'm on the right track. And he said, we're all just walking each other home.
Ram Dass.
Ram Dass, yes, that's right. Yeah. And of course, then you say, well, I don't want Trump to walk me home or something like that. But on some other level, I like that feeling that we're all struggling to find a direction and that we're all doing it together and we're all in some way like birds knowing what direction home is, even though we go astray. Or I think you would say, Jim, which makes me say it, that the going astray is part of the direction home.
Astray is when you lose your sense of misdirection. Mistaken in that you think you're going astray.
Mm-hmm.
My attention goes to disruption. And I'm thinking, what does that even mean, disruption? Is it like something that I think how things should be and it's not being met? Or is it, am I just half asleep and then something happens that sort of wakes me up? That can it be a disruption? And I'm thinking maybe I need to be more welcoming to disruptions, because I think the pattern in me is disruption. Oh no, contracting. But what if maybe there's something there that's good for me, or that's interesting, or maybe that shows me some judgments I have that I don't need to have. So thank you for that.
I want to see if I can disrupt that a little bit. There's something too positive about that. It's too comfortable saying that. How am I doing?
Could be. And it could not be.
That's even better. So who'd like to disrupt next? If you raise your hand, we won't call on you. You have to disrupt.
I'd like to say something. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. What we're talking about, it seems to me, is experience, to which the ego mind needs to put a category to gain control, perhaps. But it's all just experience, isn't it?
But when you say it's experience, you're contrasting it with something else. Like a little earlier when you weren't experiencing anything. Now we're experiencing.
You know, a little while ago, I was experiencing something different than I'm experiencing now, but it's all experience, isn't it? Seems
Yeah, if anything is all something, then what's its opposite? How could we have something that takes up all the room? Because you have to distinguish it from what came before or after, or otherwise, what's the good of the word? It's not telling us anything.
Except that I'm experiencing something now, apart from before or after. To which I have an ego need to put a category to it. So I had some sense of control of the experience. But that can change in a heartbeat too.
I hope so. I want less control.
Yeah.
I was thinking before that the question goes back to a little further to what do we mean by we? What our purpose is, who is this we, or what is the feeling of we? And you're making us, Jim, into a different we. You are encouraging us to disrupt and rethink and recalibrate and give in to not having control and go beyond control. And you're making us disorderly.
Hi, Eileen, that you're assuming I'm interrupting and disrupting. I'm not sure. I know Jim knows the answer.
I don't know anything.
You'll know whether I'm interrupting or disrupting. You put a word on it, because once a word is put on something, then it defines it. But it defines it in relation to the person that's doing the definition. So when Robert says that it was all about experience, I really liked that. I wrote it down because at least then I could say, okay, I could get a handle. We know that. I know that, because that makes me a part of we here. So when Lynn, you said Jim is making us into a different we, you're assuming that you know who we are. You know, it's like Jim wouldn't have that power to make us collectively into we. He could goad us and push our buttons. But I think that's what he's after, and he's doing a good job. I think that's what he's after. He's provoking, and he's being provocative in the creative sense, of course, you know, but we know that.
I hope so. So maybe something technical can go wrong now. Maybe we can lose our internet connection or something.
That's what I just had.
But we're on the same internet connection.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My computer just shut down. I had to go on the iPad. Now I'm trying to do this again. You know, and which brings up but it's so interesting because that's exactly what I was going to say. That was my comment before everything broke down. I was going to say that all this disruption, all this belonging, even if it's disruptive belonging, or if it's oh come on, or if it's there we go. If it's it requires trust. I mean, I don't, you know, it's like you're kind of talking about doing something different, and I feel like if trust, you know, really came up for me, that, you know, this whole idea of, you know, be disruptive. I mean, so it's hard sometimes to just be in a room with another person and not know that they weren't one of those kids who made fun of you in 8th grade. You know, how do you know who you're dealing with? You know, with me, it's always about paranoia. Although I don't think of it as paranoia. I think of it as traumatized people who are just having a hard enough time, you know, getting up in the morning and having any kind of relationships with anybody. And you're talking about these, you know, rarefied super duper ones where you're going to really take risks. And it's idealistic in a sense for a lot of us.
Idealistic.
Yeah, and being on Zoom is idealistic too. because we don't have to deal with the fact that somebody might smell bad.
I want to hear more about that.
Smelling bad?
So what if somebody smells bad? I'm not really getting the implication there.
I'm just saying that to me, Zoom is a is a really safe place because we can walk away anytime. We can decide to say something disruptive. Nothing's going to happen to us, you know.
Doesn't always feel that way to me. I've had plenty of things happen in these
yeah, but you live with
these
Jim.
confrontations with people that were I didn't even know the difference, and sometimes they were 3,000 miles away, and it just felt like I was
right there
in 7th grade sitting next to a mean girl. I mean,
yeah.
Some of us don't feel the remote as much as others do.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Yeah.
And what if just being alive is like a Zoom call? When you're born, you made your connection, and we're all on the system now, and it's perfectly safe because later we're going to get off of it.
I guess being alive means that we are interrupting something.
Hmm.
And I keep thinking about interruption, disruption. I mean, it's all the mind. I mean, I can listen to my fan and say it's a disruption. But that's just the name I give the experience, or the name of whatever meaning I give whatever I'm focusing on.
Hmm. I love your saying that. It brings to mind something about maybe we're all here to disrupt the way life is going. I mean, I think of it that we're all here to carry it forward, but maybe carrying it forward is disrupting it, you're saying.
And I think we're here to enrich each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
we enrich each other by disrupting each other in some kind of way. That's what I got from you.
I mean, every time somebody speaks, it's a disruption and also an enrichment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which has become very popular again. And the idea is that you're not probably, this is wrong, but the idea is that you're probably not going to spend a lot of time making art if you don't have enough to eat. But that's wrong. We know it's also wrong, but that's the theory. So, or even Erickson is that in other words, if you don't have basic trust or the basics of emotional security inside of yourself, it's kind of hard to disrupt. I mean, you're not up to that yet, and you can disrupt, but then it's a sort of oppositional thing to get you through the moment rather than a growth thing of going beyond the cliche life.
What I get there is that you disrupt without wanting to disrupt. You're wanting to fit in, but then with a lack of trust, you're disrupting. And then saying, "Oh my God, I just want to wake up and live my life. I don't want to disrupt."
Or you can also do it on purpose, even though that's usually unconscious. You can do it, you can disrupt on purpose because you've tried being normal and it didn't work out for you. You couldn't really do it, and so you try this other thing to try to connect. And that doesn't work either.
I'm wondering if there's different kinds of disruptions, ones that throw us off and make it hard for us to function, and disruptions that help us to grow. And we can sense which kind of disruption something is. Is this a disruption that in some way shakes me up so that I'm now going to something new? I'm not stuck in the same way of being in the world. Or is this a disruption shutting me down? I don't know, I just think I think Jim is giving us some kind of disruptions that are challenging us to not stay so stuck in ways that we've been we're stuck in. But those kind of disruptions seem really good. They sound like Zen koan or something. Yeah.
Well, I think.
But Liz, when you talk about disruption, that almost seems like it's one that kind of fills one with fear, or I'm not going to be accepted, I'm not going to be loved. People are going to hate me or something because I'm different. And that's a kind of not a disruption that really helps very much, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's that song. When you talk about disruption, don't you know that you can count me out? It's the Beatles song.
I thought it was revolution, but
yes, that's what it is. It's revolution.
Yeah,
that's right.
But say it again, Jim, the line of the song.
I'm not going to sing it though, because we agreed there's no songs. When you talk about disruption, don't you know that you can count me out? You say you want a revolution, but we all want to change the world.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think after what Charles just said, I'm thinking again in the beginning when you talked about the we and us and how this all plays out in how we relate to each other. And I think also who we are willing to relate to and feel connected to, and where we close ourselves off and others or ourselves. And yeah, I think our comfort level with others is totally created in our mind.
Sometimes we swipe left and sometimes we swipe right.
And what about the perception? The word disruption, like how that lands with me. Like I could feel it in my body when this started going about this disruption.
Mm.
It could be something very different for somebody else. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was Robert, but about the I think several people talked about this. Like, is this something that's, well, this was what it was, the enriching. Like, if I want to hear what somebody has to say, I don't consider that a disruption. I'm like engaged. I'm ready to, so isn't it how we perceive it more than the word itself? And even when it's, let's just say it's something that we feel uncomfortable about, maybe that's our disruption. And whether I take this to use this as a path of growth or whether I take this to grumble, or maybe some of both. Grumble's just how this came, but isn't that how I choose to perceive this thing that caused me to feel uncomfortable? Can I choose to I suppose it to some degree depends on how present I am. How identified I become with it. I, kind of fall with it, or, and maybe temporarily, versus the and I don't know if everybody adopts this, but the saying of things happen for a reason. And, we don't often know what it is when it's happening, but sometimes later and sometimes not. We've grown from that. We're a better person. We're more supportive to other people. So I just kind of bringing in the thought of perceiving and how it's different for each person when we use a word.
Yeah, yeah.
When you have everything happening for a reason, the only way to disrupt that is to have something happen for no reason.
Well, Jim, you imply that everything has an opposite. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily, but like that sort of does. And earlier when I think Bob was talking about something you like everything is an experience, like it's all an experience or something like that. And you said, then what's the opposite of that? So are you saying that everything has an opposite?
Only those things which have opposites have opposites.
Okay, I'm with you then. Thanks. Clear that up.
Well, maybe there's something which has no opposite, which has an opposite, but I wouldn't know what it was, but maybe somebody here does.
I was thinking that we're sort of saying there's a good kind of disruption and a bad kind of disruption. But I think that the good kind of disruption is often felt as a bad kind of disruption and bursts out of a place of paranoia or not belonging or whatever it is. But that as you say, then later we can say, oh, I grew from that. But there's something about taking risks. And it could be a very big risk for me and a small risk for somebody else or something. But the taking risks that has embarrassment and humiliation in it and awkwardness and a lot of stuff that we don't like, those risks lead to building little pieces of trust in ourselves, in the others, in life or something like that.
So a bad kind of disruption was when my cat woke me up this morning. But from the cat standpoint, cat was hungry, and it was great disruption because then I fed the cat.
One person's disruption is another person's dinner.
Hi, Jim. Can you hear me again?
Yes.
I suppose I am taking the risk to go further into your identity as misfit. I kind of have a sense that you're not playing with that, that you identify with that. And as you do that, then there's a discordance in that you aligned yourself, whether it's with me or others, and that makes you then othering yourself, So when I say I am coming after you because you're the only one, then I can, when we're in relationship, and the same with the felt sense, there has to be a self-presence that can say something in me feels, So that then is disidentifying from the feeling, and then I can bring some comfort to it. So something in me feels like a misfit, but I can't remember, it was Marianne that said earlier on, depends how identified I am with that, and a lot of things. I am identified as a human being at the moment, but also, there's enough stuff out there to say, actually, we flick on and off, you know, just I'm thinking about Mike and Singer and identity as kind of, you know, old hat and so, you know, we're as dead now as we'll ever be, you know. So again, it's coming back to once I'm in relationship, then it's easier to bring warmth, and otherwise it's mind games, you know. I think I got to risk this. I think it was what was it? Gestalt. He called it a mind fuck, and we can do that. Who is Gestalt? Fitzgerald, you know. So we can play games with each other's, and then after a while it gets exhausting, even with ourselves, you know, if we're over-identified with that. So I withdraw gracefully.
I was worried for a moment because thought you might have been accusing me of not knowing who I was and what I'm doing here. But then I was glad, because that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, I'm not supposed to be doing anything, but I am being provoked, you know, and I don't like being provoked. I don't, because after a while, but in the spirit of this, you know, but after a while, it just needs to stop, even with ourselves, you know, it's just stop and then come into, you know, so it's not black or white, you know, it's more complex than that. So I am sort of really bringing to you, you have identified as a misfit. So I find that then, well, that's a very powerful position, you know, so for someone that wants to harmonize or wants to. So anyway, should I will kind of, you asked for it, Jim, so you got it.
Yeah. That's why I asked for it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you're asking for.
Well,
but yeah, you got it. Anyway, I'm going to withdraw because it is, you know, just really feeling self-conscious because there's other people in the group, and you know, it's.
Well, I want to speak for another person in the group. Shekafe says in the chat, how do disruptions relate to stuck processes? Well, I wanted to ask. I didn't want to answer.
Well,
I would say disruptions are different than stuck process. Stuck process, you're going around in circles. There's no moving forward. Where disruptions is in motion. There's a dynamic to it. It's alive.
So isn't that kind of saying that hysteria is better than catatonia?
Why not?
I don't know. I prefer catatonia because at least I get a good night's sleep.
I heard Pauline as challenging, Jim, challenging your identity as a misfit and saying that then she wanted to disrupt that.
Yes, she was. She did want to disrupt that. And that's why I'm glad Pauline is here, because she's the one to do that. She knows who she is and what she's doing here.
I didn't want to disrupt it, Lynn. I wanted to name it and say I saw it, because I find it very difficult to be in a relationship with someone that, you know, sees themselves as, you know, othered, you know, so but yeah, and again, it's like if it was the intimacy of a group, you know, in the intimacy of a safe group, this is a public forum, you know, so it's almost like me having a mic, you know, and I find it very I know what I'm doing in the sense that I'm making myself exposed. I'm creating something, you know, out of nothing. And I think that might be another word for disruption. It's a creativity, but it's not very comfortable because I'm bringing attention to myself in a way that isn't personal, you know, in that I have no one to be in relationship with. No one's going to hold me. You think Jim is going to slip and really hold me in this? He hasn't an intention of getting intimate, you know, even with the subject matter. And that's fine, but it's a provocation then, you know, so.
I think that's a great place for us to understand my conception of what we should be doing in breakout rooms. My idea for today is to have breakout rooms where instead of getting together, we fall apart. We're going to have anti-breakout rooms where we each come to the breakout room with our inner misfit. I mean, how many of you have ever been here and was put in the breakout room and felt like, oh, I wish I was not in this breakout room. I wish I was in a different one. Well, today, that's what you should be feeling. I want you to all feel like you were put in the wrong breakout room. And I want you also to feel that these are your breakout room instructions that I'm giving now. And I want you all to feel that you don't really understand the instructions of what you're supposed to do in the breakout room. And you felt that way before, so you know what that feels like. I want you to all feel that way, that you don't know what to do, but I want you, in addition, to feel that the other people in your breakout room do. But you're ashamed to ask them. You're the only one in the breakout room who doesn't know what to do.
Wow.
And I want you to kind of sustain this feeling of inner misfit for as long as you can. Kind of sit on the fuzzy edge of alienation and see what it feels like in this cozy little breakout room, and see how long you can sustain it, which probably won't be all that long, because I expect you all to fail at this. And what I really want to know is what happens when you fail. I'm looking forward to the success of this failure so that we can figure out what happens next. And that's going to be the surprise that we can all talk about when we come out of the breakout room, if we ever do, because who knows what's going to happen. The whole world could come to an end. Christine, can you kind of throw us all somewhere?
Can I just have a comment I'd love to
Yeah.
make here that I think you're helping us to see that the inner misfit is also the inner mystic.
That's a good wordplay too. So that has that going for it.
That's what I first thought he said too.
Yeah. Me too.
We're going to say goodbye to Charles, though, because he has to go.
Bye, Charles.
Bye, Charles. This is a lot of ordering and telling
Thanks so
us
much.
what
That
to
was
do.
very nice.
And I have a little bit of a that's a misfit for me, definitely. You telling us what to do, what you want, what's happening, what, as if your perception is the right perception, all of this.
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, what's that? I mean, yes, I am in United States and we are less rebel or less maybe revolutionary, but telling me what to do, it doesn't work well for me.
All right.
There's
so
a
that's
good
great. I want you to bring that feeling into the breakout room with you.
But in my breakout room, I've always felt great. I always feel like it's
well, this is good. You can rebel by making your breakout room be wonderful.
It's not always maybe what I thought I would need, but it's always what I need.
So we'll see.
Jim, do you want to be in a room?
Oh, why not?
I think Jim needs to be in a room for sure.
We'll come back.
Go to your room, Jim.
We'll come back at.
June, say something? No.
We'll come back at 9:30, right? Hi, June.
Hello.
You look very laid back, June.
I am.
You look like you fit right in. Hi, Soling.
Hi, Pauline. Thank you. You are a great listener.
Oh, good. Thank you. Well, I just enjoyed. I hope you bring it back in. It's very valuable. Su Ling made the distinction between, well, maybe it's private, is it?
No, you can go.
The distinction between bringing in ideas than bringing it, so it wasn't being a disruptive person, but that the ideas were disruptive. So that was really good.
And a good distinction, yeah.
Very good, yeah. Really just exciting.
Can you say it again for those of us who tuned in a little later?
Will you say it, Su Ling?
I think you can say it, Colin.
I'm going to
say it by using the Chinese language.
Oh,
good.
Say it in Chinese.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for you. Oh, good for you.
So I'm going to rewind it back to the very beginning of our discussion. So what is going on within me?
Yes.
I told Pauline that there are a lot of boilings within me as I'm in the discussion at the earlier stage, at the earlier of our discussions. But it's just that there is something that I need to clarify, a lot of ideas that throwing in, There's part of me that needs some clarifications of all these things that coming in, jumping in. And that stopped me actually to being disruptive. Yeah. And yes. I'm supposed to say it in Chinese.
Yeah, say it in Chinese now.
Anyone translate? Okay. I have a question.
Where
does she get the clarification from? Who is speaking? Yes, I said, where does the clarification you talked about come from? Just to clarify what is there. What is the right thing to do? Why is the right thing to say? What am I supposed to say? There's so many things within. Right. And how do you make that decision? And I try to tell myself probably how to make the decisions. So the thought process is, I started with, I'm not sure what is the right thing to say here. And then something to do with that right and wrong brings me back to myself. Or probably the right direction is to go backward go inward. Why don't I just stay with myself, with all these doubts I have, and let things fall off? And that keep me in place, I would say.
So I want to ask if anybody had a terrible breakout room and they want to complain about it. Anybody?
Actually, Jim, I had maybe the best breakout room I've ever had, so it was quite delightful.
That's disruptive. Go ahead.
Well, that's it, really.
That's even better because it's disruptive and that's it.
There you go.
I'm curious about what made it the best breakout room.
Well, for one thing, Lynn, I normally don't even join the breakout rooms, but today the thought didn't deter me, or my companions were thoughtful, grounded, open, able to listen and give feedback.
Mm.
And I think that I started off by saying something, and I have a tendency to hang back. In fact, I feel, okay, I can be in a group that's of 3 because that way I can hang back and kind of hide. And today I'm clearly in a different place because I spoke first and I gave an opinion. So there you go.
Well, what I love about this is that a good experience can be a disruption also.
Yes, yes.
Going along in a pattern of I don't fit in, I don't like groups, I can't, and this is going to be another experience like this. And all of a sudden, wow, that's a disruption.
Mm.
And I think always to take the chance to be present enough that that can happen. That's what I'm thinking from here.
Yes.
It's like all the patterns I have in my head of how things are bad and never gonna be better. And all of a sudden, to really notice, oh, actually, something good happened.
To be open.
It interrupts my pattern.
Mm. There's something about being open to surprise or even seeking surprise.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that Ina's here today.
Yeah, I work out on Mondays, so I can never come. But when I see Jim's name, got it, at least show my face. I listen to the recording. And nice to see everybody.
So the disruptive or the disruptions itself is a reward.
Can be.
Well,
being disruptive itself is the reward. Oh. Pauline, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think Suling, what you said, I found really new and fresh. And it was even in our conversation, it felt like that it was almost focusing, you know, even though we hadn't that intense, new things came up in the, you know, listening to each other. But what you said was that, bringing in ideas, because you're so identified with the Chinese culture of representing your family, but that bringing in ideas can be disruptive. And the distinction then was the value, that there was a tension between you being valuable as being quiet and not disruptive and bringing in ideas. I thought that was very fresh. Yeah, it was new to that. Yeah.
I'd love to hear from Nikhil.
Hello, Lynn.
Hi. How was your breakout room?
Disruptive. No, it was great. We were 3 misfits together, and one of the misfits, or maybe both, put me in my right place, which felt wrong, which was great. But, you know, the whole conversation that Jim brought is strange, but pretty wonderful, because we always, maybe not we always, but there's a search for harmony, beauty, and stuff like that, while everything maybe sometimes around us is totally havoc. And we search order when everything is chaos. And it was like a little window that Jim was bringing in. It's like, what about reality? What about what's really happening within us? And for me, this, if I had one word, would be that whatever it is that we're stuck, we're disruptive, we're silent, we're ignoring anything, whatever we're doing, we're moving. it's movement.
Mm.
You know, it has been said that life is movement, movement is a process. So without movement, life is unthinkable. So we probably don't know what Jim really did right now and how he's experiencing right now and what would be the side effects after we close the meeting today. But either it did something to us or we opened up to something that introduces change.
Yes.
And this is, I think this is the purpose of this group. To have certain understanding that we don't necessarily fully understand, and we're up to moving forward to, and moving forward is not always comfortable because it introduces modification and changes. And so how do we feel expanding our awareness? It's everybody is different with that. So thank you, Lynn, for asking, and thank you for everyone for participating. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Jim.
Brings up an experience I had as a young woman studying art, and the art teacher was trying to disrupt my art making, and she said, "You better really watch your tendency toward the decorative, or someday your painting will be hanging in a gallery, and people will walk by and say, 'Oh, that's nice.'" And I thought that was so intriguing because I wish that my paintings would be hanging in a gallery and somebody would say it was nice. And then I saw from her point of view that that's the worst thing that could happen.
Do you still believe that, Lynn? Do you still believe that?
That
well, that being nice is just an awful thing to be called.
Yeah. Yes. Like if people said, "Oh, the Helpers group. Oh, that's a very nice group."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're very nice, Lynn. You're very nice.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Save me!
Nice lady. Yeah.
That could be considered very disruptive.
I just want to highlight something Jim said about because I'm thinking of in meditation, we also slow down to perceive movements. So it's like everything is movement, but it takes a certain presence to really experience that. Because so much we are just in the thought about it, like how nothing is changing or how nothing is the way we want it to be. And I'm thinking, I heard that from Shinsen Yang, and he said that, like the famous statement, "This too shall pass." He said, if we really pay attention, it is changing right now. So even with stuckness,
right,
it's a movement. And if we really pay attention, we can actually see that it is moving. It might not be moving as fast as we want it to, but it is moving.
Yes.
I'm thinking of the music of Philip Glass and some of the other minimalists, and I never liked it because it was same, repetitive. And then I read an interview with Philip Glass, and he said, no one measure is the same. Actually, he's making minute changes every single time that the thing is repeated. And he's a practicing Buddhist too. So that's what he's doing. Sounds like what you were saying, Robert, that what you were quoting. That it always feels the same in a way, but it's also always different and new.
Well, also like work with chronic pain, it sometimes helps to really pay attention and then notice that it's actually not consistent. What people as chronic pain. And that it's a story in the mind that it's again, never, always. But then really paying attention, it has a lot of space.
Yeah.
And that brings me a question. That brings, a question to me. The kind of meditative mind. It's quite common for me to sink into the meditative mind. Like, to enjoy the passions of the world, the me. Okay. But again, when come to a discussion, like, being with others, if you are just sit quiet, I mean, there is always, it's quite a conflict to jump in or to stay with yourself.
Yes.
Being with yourself is so enjoyable, looking at the flows, the passions that you have within yourself. But the urge to relate is also there.
Yeah,
you can see that. Yes. So Lynn, you can understand what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely. I'm thinking that this discussion is getting richer and richer, and we'd love to go on, but I think we need to have Dorothy's poem. And Jim, thank you so much. This is very, very interesting and provocative and fun.
I'm sorry.
Well, I don't blame you.
Disruptive answer.
Right.
The poem today is by Emily Dickinson. I'm nobody. Who are you? I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. We'll advertise, How dreary to be somebody. How public. Like a frog to tell someone's name the livelong June to an admiring bog.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks, Jim.
Enjoy summer.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jim.
Week.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Lynn.
Jim.